Hi, my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have Bryan joining us. As you may remember, he was a former state senator. Hi, Bryan. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's definitely good to be out of the cold today on the farm. So
I bet. Well, I wanted to talk to you about tax increases, a balanced budget. What does that truly mean? You know, right now Conduit is doing a series of articles about, okay, these are campaign words that you are going to hear or phrases that you're going to hear out and about, but what does it truly mean? One of those things that we hear often, and we're hearing especially now after the most recent special session, is, you know, largest tax cut. We keep the budget balanced. Talk to us about that, and does that truly mean that that is a fiscally conservative Republican, or are they just are those just empty words?
yeah, you know, just on the farm today, I talked about how cold it is, and you know, we have to put up with. I'll since I'm a blue collar guy, and I'll try and be a little reserved in my language. It's just like you have to be careful about what you step into. You know, today it's frozen what you could step into, but on other days not. But let me just explain this on the balanced budget part. So basically, when somebody says, if it's Bryan King or whoever says there's a balance, you know, I voted for a balanced budget, really that's BS. Okay. And it's probably not even frozen BS. What it is when they vote for RSA, it is a spending target. Okay. It's like saying, you know, I expect $10 to come in, I'm going to spend $10. And if only $8 comes in, what balances the budget is, as David pointed out, what the law says that they can only spend. So it's the law that balances the budgets, not the politicians. If, like I said, if $10 is the budget, what they say is a balanced budget, the reality is if $8 comes in, they can only spend $8. That's it.
How can Arkansans see through all of this? You know, we'll hear the rhetoric. We balance the budget. You know, we kept us out of the red. We did all of this. We cut your taxes. And so many people who don't get into the weeds of it will see that headline and think, man, that's fantastic. You know, I'm going to keep voting for that. When in actuality, they may be partnering with big corporations, expanding the government, and they don't see that other side.
No, and it's part of the holes in the media. It's like, you know, we've talked off camera about the holes in the media and the reporting down there. You know, they just will not report it. And it's something I've called them out on. There's another instance of, you know, what I call holes in the media reporting. There was somebody, Jim Hendren, put out a tweet about here a while back about the Office of Transformation and how it cut jobs and it saved jobs. Well, the reality is what Jim failed to mention is he spent years growing those jobs and voting for those jobs that he's now bragging about cutting. He voted through that through the appropriation process and through the budget process. So it's like the media doesn't say, well, hey, Jim, you know, didn't you not vote to create these? If you're bragging about cutting wasteful spending, who's responsible for that wasteful spending? Well, it was Jim Hendren. And I spent a career down there, 2 terms on personnel committees and saw the jobs. And so I would go out and say, these jobs are wasteful jobs. Arkansans can miss these jobs, $100,000 a year jobs, and not miss one thing out there and never know it was gone. And I would go to Michael Wickline with the Democrat Gazette, and I would show him these jobs, and I go back the next day, and you know, those weren't in there, but he might quote me or something like that. So I contacted Michael Wickline back here recently and said, hey, here's the deal. What's the other story to this? I mean, Jim says in one tweet he's bragging about, you know, saving taxpayers so much money, but he's not failing to mention that he spent years wasting those money on those jobs.
That's really interesting. I'm sure that, but you're used to stepping on toes, so that's nothing new. Well, you know, a lot of people also aren't aware that Arkansas is one of the most taxed states in the country. And like you mentioned, it's like, you know, they'll take money over here, raise your taxes, and then on the other side, they're like, look at what we're giving you back. But it's something that they've already taken from, you know, the Arkansans. So what would you suggest when people are looking at those running in these primaries, coming up for a re-election in some cases? What would you suggest they do for accountability for those to be fiscally conservative?
Yeah, number one thing to ask them is, did you spend less than you did the year before? Okay, I go all the way back in 2010 when that recession hit Arkansas, and then Obama came in with the mini bailout compared to the last bailout. And we said, the normal cycles of, hey, you have a budget shortfall, then you go back into spending reductions, and you look at ways to make efficiencies and quit wasteful spending, and then that creates a surplus. Well, that got bypassed in 2010. And then fast forward, I said at the time, if we don't start spending differently and less money, and if you want to add a program, well, then you need to go find another way. You don't need to depend on future revenues because something might happen again. Well, that exact thing has happened again, and COVID, and then when it hit, and so you see that their spending priorities really hasn't changed because they are still spending more than ever. And the reality is, the danger is right now that nobody wants to talk about is that this is really a borrowed economy. With all the money on the debt and the deficit and all this money coming in, it has made it very dangerous in Arkansas that the financial decisions be made in the last budget sessions. They just keep spending like nothing is going to change, and that's just not very prudent to do.
Right. And we've also talked about this. If you don't have economic freedom, if the government continues to grow and they have more of your money, you don't have any other freedom. And we're really starting to see that, especially after COVID, the lockdowns, the mandates. We're seeing that, it's more apparent than ever.
Yeah. And, I'll give you another example, like on Jim Hendren, for example. He chaired all these task force and all these per diem, and people look at the legislative per diem, and it's really got out of hand of the amount of legislators, even when I left and was still calling out, that are down there just using it as an income source to further profit themselves and make it work. And I'll give you an example there. When he started the tax reform task force, as I spent as my time being budget chairman of different committees, you're given a budget to work with. There was not ever one time I ever went back and asked for more money. And as I sent you the article, and I hope you can share the headlines with people, his task force on that one, the expenses had to be tripled. And when it comes to legislative per diem, and this is a blue collar, tongue-in-cheek example, but whenever you talk about Jim Hendren and his spending and his wasteful spending, yet he says that he's physically conservative and it's all this. If you look at even in that example on legislative per diem and how he managed things with all these task force that literally wasted a lot of money on legislative per diem, for example, and I say this is tongue in cheek, but if legislative per diem was cocaine, Jim Hendren would be Pablo Escobar. I mean, that's how it was. And the expenses of the tax reform task force, which spent a lot of money on consultants that couldn't even get the facts straight, when we had adequate staff there that was excellent in getting us accurate information, he instead just went and stuck it to the taxpayers. And then, legislators just sign in and get money for meetings, and they don't ever hold them accountable. And as I said in the media, they don't hold them accountable either. It's all a big cloud down there. And then what comes out of the cloud from the media and legislators not speaking out, is two different things. And unfortunately, people need to hopefully going to wake up and pay attention at how much money is wasted on jobs that don't even need to be there. I'm just not talking about programs that are needed. For example, the waiting list. I'm talking about just literally millions of dollars that have been wasted down there that no one holds accountable. And hopefully the media will step up and start reporting the truth down there. That's just what I hope is the first step.
Yeah. Well, listen, I always appreciate you shedding light on these issues and talking about them, even when perhaps others don't want to. So thank you so much for joining Conduit today. Anything else?
All right. Thank you, Jenny. No, I just hope it warms up. I don't know if anybody else. I'm already one of these people that I'm just counting down the days till it's 70 degrees and warmer. So
I'm right there with you. Well, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Bryan.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. Take care.